What's up, guys? If you like my previous video on 3 essential upgrades for Claude Code, you're going to love this because today I'm showing you 3 more powerhouse tools to make your Claude Code setup faster, easier, and better. If you want to build an app, these tools will help you do just that by automating some of the most essential steps for building. So without further ado, let's dive in. So what are the 3 tools we're talking about today? We've got Supabase, Clerk, and Semgrep. Supabase is for setting up and managing a database. Clerk is for setting up and managing user authentication, and Semgrep is for security code scanning. So let's start with Supabase. Supabase is an open source backend service you can add to your app. If you've ever heard of Google Firebase, this is a very popular, easy to use alternative. You can do a lot with Supabase, including using it to add database and storage components to your app. And if you're building an app, these things are absolutely essential, but not always straightforward to set up. Luckily, Supabase has us covered with their own MCPs tool that can automate the hassle of setting up and managing a database. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to supabase.com and set up an account. They have a generous free tier, so don't worry about having to pay for this, but you have to set up for an account. Now, once you have an account, you can create your first project. All you do is click on New Project, and you will set it up whatever name you like and type in a database password. Make sure to write that down. Now, once you have the project set up, you can see I have an MCP demo that we'll be using for this project. You will go into the API settings for your project, copy the database URL, as well as the anon public key. Now, once you have the database URL and the database password and the anon key for your project, you're going to want to save that somewhere on a notepad temporarily. We're going to be using those 3 things shortly. Now, the only variable you need to set up the Supabase MCP is an access token. Now, at the MCP page for Supabase, there's a link here. I will put this down in the show notes. Once you have an account, you can click on this link here in their instructions. It will open up this tab right here, and you can generate a new token. You can name it whatever you want and click generate, and then you copy it to your keyboard and put it in the same notepad file that we're tracking all the other variables for Supabase. Now, once you have the access token, that's what you'll need to input in the next command. This is the command that's going to install the Supabase MCP so that Claude Code can use it. I'm going to put this command down in the show notes, so no need to memorize it or enter it in right now, but this is the basic syntax. And where it says insert your token here, delete that and add the token that we just generated and copied to our clipboard. Now, I've already added this, but once you do that, you can open another terminal, type Claude to launch Claude, and make sure that every time you install a new MCP server, you restart Claude so that it can see those MCPs you just installed. And to check what you installed, you just type /MCP, and you can see I have all 3 of the MCP servers that we're talking about today, including Supabase. So what can you use the Supabase MCP to do? Well, you can use it to create a database in an app that doesn't currently have one. So in this demo, you can see I have this Notes app. I actually created this in a previous demo video, but I've stripped out and completely deleted the database functionality, including all the Supabase hooks, so that we can see how to start fresh and set it up with the MCP. So I'm going to go back into Claude and enter the following prompt. So basically just saying the MCP demo, this app was created with the intention of using Supabase as a backend and to use the Supabase MCP to connect everything and set it up for us. So you can see it set up a list of to-dos to check the existing Supabase project configuration, the database schema, verify all the tables are set up in Supabase for us, implement row-level security, which is awesome and very crucial for setting up a database, and then to make sure we have all the environment variables configured. Now, that's one thing I wanted to show you guys while this is going on. You'll need to create a .env file with those variables that I asked you to save earlier in a notepad. And we'll get to the Clerk stuff in a second, but you need your DB password for Supabase and your public anon key for Supabase as well. The access token is only actually used for the Supabase MCP, so you don't have to put that in your .env file. But in order for the Supabase to actually work with your app, you'll need these variables that we just discussed earlier. Okay, so Claude just finished up here, and you can see it's created an entire database schema. We've got tables for notes, folders, tags, and profiles. We've got row-level security on all of the tables. And also, the MCP went ahead and created a sample note to make sure that everything is working and that notes that get created in the front end are logged in the back-end database in Supabase. Now, why is this so valuable? So if you've ever worked with Supabase or any database before Claude Code, or really before this MCP came out, anytime you wanted to create a database, you'd have to use the SQL editor within the Supabase dashboard. That was on the website I just showed you. So if you're working with Claude or with Cursor or with Windsurf, it will give you commands in the SQL editor that you then copy and paste into your browser, into supabase.com in your project to create and manage the tables. And that back and forth takes a lot of time. This Supabase MCP cuts that out completely. There's no middleman and you save a ton of time. And next up on the list is the Clerk MCP. Now, if you're building an app, your users need a way to log in. That's why user authentication is critical to building an app. A Clerk is one of the best platforms I've ever seen for doing this. It makes things super simple to set up. Everything from using Apple or Google to sign in, or from using multi-factor authentication. It kind of streamlines a lot of these really complex workflows that you might be familiar with if you've ever tried to implement auth from scratch or using something like Auth0. Clerk is really easy. But even though Clerk is easy to use, there's still a lot of steps in the setup process, and the MCP helps to automate a lot of that and make the setup process as seamless as possible for you and your app. So to get started, go to clerk.com, which I have here. You can set up an account. They also offer a free tier just like Supabase, so you don't have to worry about paying at first. I've already logged in, and once you do that, you create a new project. You can name it whatever you want based on your app. And then you get this nice little handy page where you can copy the environment variables you'll need to set up the Clerk MCP, but also to make sure that Clerk works in your app. So go ahead and click this, copy, and add this to a notepad or something to save it for the next step. So to add the Clerk MCP, just simply open up a new terminal window and copy and paste this command. This one is kind of a long one, but I'll put this in the show notes, don't worry. And where it says Clerk secret key equals insert your key here, leave the brackets in, but fill in the secret key that you just copied from the previous step and press enter. And once you do that, restart Claude so that it can see the Clerk MCP. Now, Clerk's MCP is a little interesting because they don't actually have an official MCP like Supabase or Semgrep, but they do have an official agent-toolkit package, which is shown in this repo, and this connects your AI agent to Clerk's backend functions. And what we're doing with the MCP is simply creating a local MCP server on your computer that runs this agent-toolkit package and connects Claude Code to those functions in Clerk. Okay, so how do you use the Clerk MCP? So let's go back to this demo notes app we have. If you notice that there is anonymous access enabled, that basically means there's no user authentication, there's no user tracking yet in this sample app. So we want to use the Clerk MCP to set up Clerk authentication. And what we're going to do is just enter this simple prompt that says, I want to set up user authentication using Clerk, and to use the Clerk MCP to make that happen. And you can see in the to-dos that it's actually connecting Supabase and Clerk. These two things can work together. So you can manage your user database in Supabase. You can manage the user authentication in Clerk. Okay, it just finished up with the Clerk authentication setup. It looks like everything is done. So let's just run this to test. Okay, perfect. The Clerk authentication pop-up shows here. And if we click sign up, we can enter our email address and password, and hopefully this will create an account for us. Okay, so it's emailed us an authentication code. I'm going to check back in 1 second after I get that. Okay, perfect. And I entered that confirmation code that I got from the email, which is also super cool because Clerk automates all of that for you. You don't have to set up any of those hooks. And when I log in, you can see the login flow works. So this is totally awesome. It automated everything, and I didn't have to do anything to set this up. That brings us to our third and final MCP tool, which is Semgrep. Semgrep is an open source application security tool that scans your code base for common vulnerabilities, bugs, and coding patterns across a bunch of different languages. It has a strong community of developers, adding to its growing library of more than 2,000 common coding issues and vulnerabilities that it will scan your code for. Now, unlike the previous two MCPs, you do not need an account to use the MCP for Semgrep. Semgrep does have a product that you can sign up for here, and you can use certain advanced features in the MCP if you do sign up for it, but it is simply not necessary for most use cases, and the Semgrep MCP is completely free. As you can see, this is the GitHub repo for Semgrep, and we will show you how to install it in Claude Code right now. Okay, to add the Semgrep MCP to Claude Code, you simply copy and paste this command here. You don't need any special keys, and you press enter. Now, one thing I will note, I ran into this error when I just set up this Semgrep MCP. There is a recent update to the FastMCP Python package, which Semgrep depends on, and there is a dependency issue between these two files where if you use a newer version of FastMCP, it actually breaks the Semgrep MCP server, so you have to pin to a previous version. If you don't understand any of this, I'm going to put something in the show notes for you where you can fix this in your claude.json file so that Semgrep MCP will work for you. But these are the arguments that you'll have to put in that claude.json file to pin the previous version of FastMCP and make this work. So once you have Semgrep MCP installed, once again, restart Claude. And the use case for this is pretty simple. We have built all this code. We have a database backend with Supabase. We've got a Clerk authentication flow going. We've wrote a lot of code today with our AI agent, and we want to make sure that it's all good and secure code. So we're going to enter this prompt to use the Semgrep MCP to scan the code for any vulnerabilities, and we're going to see what it comes back with. Okay, and you can see our scan actually came back pretty clean. They found one vulnerability, which is a XSS cross-site scripting vulnerability, and you can just ask Claude Code to fix that. But this is super cool because it's automating a lot of things that are very important for scanning code that AI agents write. You want to make sure there are not any holes if you ever put this into production, and Semgrep helps you automate that and do that. There you go. Supabase, Clerk, and Semgrep, 3 amazing MCPs that you can start using today. These tools will take your Claude Code workflow to the next level, making it faster and easier for you to add user authentication in a database to your app and to make your app more secure, all with just a few prompts and clicks. These tools have definitely saved me a ton of time, so if they do the same for you, drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.